I cannot say enough about how important and critical and crucial the onboarding process is. Way back when I started recruiting 25 years ago, and I used to do what you said, Ira, where give me my check, offer letter, sign, and here I go, out of here. But why that didn't work is because after I would place someone, inevitably, I would start to get the phone calls within 2 weeks or 3 weeks of them starting saying, hey, should I be concerned about blah, blah, blah with the employee? And it was always from the employer. I'm like, well, time out. Let me just check. Talk to me about your onboarding process.
The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf, and co-host, Joyce Joya.
Hey, welcome, everyone. Welcome, Googlization Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. Happy Cinco de Mayo Day. So we'll be doing our proverbial drinks and toasts. Yes. Joyce, welcome back to another week.
Thank you, Ira. It's great to be back with you. The only thing I have to toast with is coffee, though.
Yep, that's it. Yep, I've got it. Got it covered. So we've been around. Well, we've been around long enough, but we've lived through enough events, and it seems like deja vu to about 20 years ago, which was about when we first met. And we were talking about I was talking the perfect labor storm. You were talking about the impending crisis. But every single, I can't even say every single day, every few hours, I get another email, another alert, another headline about the challenges of hiring people. And again, for slightly different reasons. I mean, in the late 1990s, we had an incredibly robust job generation because of the dot-com technology was just coming into play, and it's still in play, and there's still many things. But jobs were just being created. Hundreds of thousands of jobs were being creating every month. Now, job creation is slowed a bit. You know, we're fortunate to have about 150 to 200,000 a month, and we're inching back up there. But the problem is there's just not enough people with the right skills, or they're mal-distributed. They're not distributed in the right places. So they live in areas where the jobs aren't, and there are many companies that are going toward those companies.
Yeah, we at the Herman Group used to call that misemployment or disemployment, because we have millions of people who are perfectly trained and very capable of handling jobs that no longer exist.
And that barrier should be down for many of those jobs. Obviously, for clinical healthcare, it's a little difficult. But for many jobs,
Yes.
And even those jobs, other than literally being bedside, there's many medical healthcare jobs, but there's manufacturing jobs, distribution. We still need our Amazon drivers until we get our drones, and everybody has
and autonomous vehicles
until that comes. So there are still many jobs that are present, but for other people, geography, location is no longer a barrier, so you can tap that talent. So a lot of things are happening. So really excited today. We're going to have Molly McGrath as our first guest. Her company, she primarily works in the legal field, but her company is Hiring and Empowering Solutions, and we're going to talk about what she's finding and how she, some of the tips, suggestions, what she advises her clients to do to help attract and also retain people. And then
actually Molly has this really nifty onboarding process that we're going to ask her about that practically guarantees that her placements, she's a recruiter, will stay, and her clients.
That's so incredibly important. I've worked with a few recruiters, and it used to be, hey, we got your job offer, everything's signed, send me the check for all the work done, and they'll show up on May 10th. And that ended. And, included in my recruitment, the REACH acronym, which is REACH, which is how do you reach people, engage people, apply, communicate, And the final one is hire. And I don't spend a lot of time on it because companies are really struggling even to get people into the pipeline. But ultimately, hire I say this all the time, hiring does not end at a job offer. Hiring includes onboarding, and it should go for months in that because there's so many employees that leave after 30, 60, 90 days. The turnover rates are just atrocious. So we're going to be talking about that with Molly. And then our second segment today, we're going to have Tova Sherman, and we're going to be talking with her about her new book, which is called Win, Win, Win. But she's going to be talking about disability in the workplace and how that should be part of diversity and inclusion, which we've been talking about a lot. So that's going to be a great topic. And she's got she has 18 inclusion tips. We obviously can't cover them all, but every one of them we could have a whole show on. So,
right. Well, maybe we'll ask her for
we'll come
most
back.
Important ones, right?
Absolutely. There's always so much to talk about. So just one announcement I want to make sure we cover because we want to get Molly on. The webinar I've got coming up on May 20th is How to Grow. We changed the title a little bit, have a little fun with it. We've been playing with the FCDD theme, the F'd up, which is frustrating, confusing, disappointing, distraction. The other day, it was like, this is the world we live in. It's frustrating, confusing, sometimes disappointing, and it's definitely a lot of distractions out there. So I applied that, and we're going to be talking about how to grow and thrive in an FCDD world. And then next week, actually, our guest is Debbie Levitt. One of our guests is Debbie Levitt next week, and Debbie's going to be talking about UX and CX, but she's the one who introduced me to that acronym. And we've had a lot of fun with it. So that's
good. Maybe you'll introduce me to that acronym later.
Yeah. So you see it on everything. It's now become every part of my every keynote, every presentation that I do. And there's the link. It is free to come to the webinar on February 20th. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a Thursday. So to see you there. So appreciate that. And we want to thank, before we jump in, one last thing, we want to thank Ngomo and Success Performance Solutions for being our sponsors again. And you'll hear from more of them at the break. So right now we're going to bring on Molly McGrath. Her company is Hiring and Empowering Solutions, which sort of says it all. She works primarily in the legal field, which, going back when I started this business, I worked with professionals. I worked primarily in healthcare, but some of my first clients were accountants, and I had one attorney. And it was pretty early in the game. I mean, it was like they didn't see the need to why did you need to screen people to hire them and selection and interview? It was more is that they go to the right school. They go to the right school, right education. What was their interest? They'd come in as an intern or an apprentice. Basically you're an aide. So it was pretty interesting. And, things have definitely changed. So hopefully Molly is still attached to us. There she is.
There she is. Welcome, Molly.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Ira and Joyce.
Sure. Molly, both Ira and I have actually just discussed how very tight this job market is. What is your take, and what does that mean for employers?
Yeah, I have never seen anything like this. Like, as Ira said, I by and large serve in the professional services with the main focus on attorneys. And the market has never been this tight. The pandemic exploded and people went and had to figure out how to work from home and adapt to that. And now getting people that want to come back into the office and or to leave that remote life is extraordinary. There's all this talk about unemployment and not being able to get people to come back to work because it'll hurt their unemployment or what have you. That by and large is in the service and retail industry. In the professional industry right now, the pandemic taught them to really evaluate their core values, evaluate what they're looking for in an employer, what they're looking for and how they spend their time and energy every single day. And it's fascinating. So the days of throwing an ad up on Indeed.com or what have you and having a million resumes come your way, that is completely dead. And it's in every industry. I belong to several recruiting masterminds that have people from IT to healthcare to professional services to engineering, what have you. And we're hearing this across the board where it is like crickets when you reach out to candidates. And so now as recruiters and employers, you have to get really, really creative with your invitation out to people. It's more so moved from the job application process to the recruiting process, where when you spend your energy on recruiting and reaching out to people, write an engaging subject line and engaging body, and revamp your employment ad. I equated to think about you're writing your profile for Match.com. It's very similar. It is no different, because at the end of the day, you have to have a very engaging, compelling invitation for people to want to at least hop in a Zoom room with you or get on a phone call with you.
Yes, and the candidates are clearly back in the driver's seat, kind of like it was in the year 2000. I co-authored a book called How to Choose Your Next Employer, because the candidates were choosing, right?
Yes. Oh, indeed. It absolutely is. When I get on the phone with them and I talk to them and say, why are you even getting on a call with me? Tell me what is taking your valuable time to that. And when I break it down, they'll say, well, there's not a tremendous amount of opportunity within my organization right now. And my next question is, what's your definition of opportunity? Talk to me about what opportunity means. Most employers think it's more money or higher up-leveled job description or title. That's not the case. When I start really peeling away the layers of the onion, they're no longer connected to the heartbeat of the business. They're not clear what true north is. And at the end of the day, the most simplistic thing that really has been blowing my mind, and I'm hearing it over and over and over and over again, is that really that entrepreneurs and employers and leaders are lacking giving employees the three basic things that they need and why they will never, ever leave you. It's time, attention, and feedback. You have to remember you're hiring human beings first and foremost, and employers come from a place of hiring human doings. That's secondary. It's usually the human being stuff that either get people to leave or get them fired.
Yeah, as you're talking, it's when I talk about recruitment marketing, and talk about not recruitment marketing, but improving the candidate experience. The way that employers search for workers, and the way that job seekers search for jobs is really different, because it used to be, and certainly when we started our careers, especially when I started my career, and Joyce, we'd have to drive down to the place and fill out an application, or we type the resume out and we had to physically mail it or drive it down. We had to do them one at a time. You don't have bad Xerox copies or mimeograph copies of it. Now, what's changed is that you can, with one click, you upload your resume, and with one click,
digital, sure.
Jobs. So what's changed is where the commitment is. When we wanted to apply for a job, when you had to manually fill out every single application or resume or type of resume, there was a commitment. We had to do that. And then you had to mail it or fax it or email it, whatever it was. Today, the commitment doesn't start until after that you as a recruiter would call or contact the candidate, and then they decide, do I want to pick up?
Yes.
So there's no commitment there. But the other part that's really, really interesting is also from the job seekers. They say, you contact them. The first thing they do is they go up to your website, and the first thing they do is go on LinkedIn, and they check the company out.
Right. They go on Glassdoor and see what kind of ratings you have. Right. Yeah.
They're checking, what's it look like? What is there imagery? Is there a story? And I love what you just said about, the job descriptions are stories. You need to tell a story about your company. So it's interesting. And I think you're probably in the green room when we talked about it. When I started my career, I was going to focus just on professionals, attorney, and I came from healthcare. So it was going to be healthcare. And then my first two clients happened to be an attorney and an accountant, and they were struggling hiring, people. but it was a very different criteria. You used to get the education, the credentials, what they needed the person to do, and it was a very different market. There was a lawyer glut at the time.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. A few things you said, Ira, that I want to hang your hat on is number one. So often the biggest mistake they make is they get seduced by a resume and they judge a person by the resume. And to your point, it's all artificial intelligence right now. And I tell people my recruiting process is I want to talk to absolutely everybody, whether they apply or I recruit them, because this is what happens. Because there's so much technology, so often when I call someone and I say, tell me what's up with your resume, you've been unemployed for 6 months or what have you. I can't tell you, 9 out of 10 people will say to me, where in the world did you get that resume? And I'm like, it came from Indeed or it came from LinkedIn or what have you. And there's so much we're depending on technology is that they're like, that was the old one that was uploaded, or I uploaded that one before my 2 jobs ago and it's missing information. It's number one. So I tell employers, you have to talk to everybody, because if they were award-winning writers, they wouldn't be applying for your job. They would be in the journalists. If they would be copywriters, they would be what have you. So really you want to talk to as many people as possible. And I love that you use that analogy about attorneys where you say, well, the only thing that matters is what prestigious school they went to. How many years of experience. That hasn't changed. I talked to probably 5 law firms yesterday where number one, they said, I don't want to talk to this candidate. I don't like the law school that they went to. And it's fascinating how the professional services really have not evolved in regards to that. And it takes a tremendous amount of coaching for me to say, well, guess what? They went to your website and your website's so completely outdated. You don't have a video on there. You have no blogging on there. It's not interactive. And your picture, I had to have a conversation with an attorney yesterday. We have phenomenal candidates, but when they go to the website, they say, I'm not interested. And they trust recruiters. Employees think that we work for them, which is a cool thing because they overshare with us and give us a lot of information. And this one in particular law firm, the attorney's picture was terrible. He did not look approachable, looked like a very mean, angry attorney, and they worked in criminal law. And I had to have a conversation with him saying, you got to update your website. You need some videos on there. You need to give me a video so I can inbox these candidates so they can see your essence. They can see your personality, because the way your website is projecting your company is not who you are. I know that.
Yeah, most of them don't realize that if they show themselves interacting with their employees, that makes a big difference. It makes prospective candidates feel like maybe this is someplace that I'd like to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, one is, Molly, and I'm sure you said this earlier. This has nothing to. It's still a problem in law and accounting and healthcare, engineering, but it's a problem everywhere. I mean, people still have these artificial criteria, and then you get what I had called credential creep a while ago. Like, when we hired somebody, they only had a 2-year degree and 2 years of experience, and they didn't really work out well. So let's make it a 4-year degree and 5 years experience.
Yes, I love that. That's so true.
That's how it's been. Right? So and that works. It doesn't matter if you're hiring a bartender or an attorney. Everybody still relies on skills. Once we get people into the pipeline, and everybody's struggling with that, and I don't want to just spend all that time on there. What are some of you have some really, really great suggestions, some of the things that you do, and we definitely want to cover onboarding, but what are some of the other things you do or work or advise to, whether it's professionals or a manufacturing plant, that they do through the process, beyond just, hey, write a better ad and you'll get thousands of people?
Yes. Once you have a candidate and they've accepted your position, and from the day that they start, I cannot say enough about how important and critical and crucial the onboarding process is. Way back when I started recruiting 25 years ago, and I used to do what you said, Ira, where give me my check, offer letter, sign, and here I go, out of here. But why that didn't work is because after I would place someone, inevitably, I would start to get the phone calls within 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I'm starting saying, hey, should I be concerned about blah, blah, blah with the employee? And it was always from the employer. I'm like, well, time out. Let me just check. Talk to me about your onboarding process. And it was crickets. It was non-existent. Well, I threw them the employee manual. I sat them down and I put them in front of some training videos and et cetera.
Right.
But again, there was no true onboarding process. So I cannot, regardless of what industry you are, from day one, make it very, very simple. If you meet with someone and you get clear on their KPIs or key performance indicators that you want to see, I always make it simple. When I facilitate the onboarding, my number one question is to the boss, to the manager, to the entrepreneur, whatever terminology resonates with you. What would make you absolutely delighted with the investment of this new employee when we are sitting here 30 days from now? And I allow for them to dump it all out. And then we really get it in a clear, concise, well communicated, where we can track and measure it and identify it into the top 3-5 goals. Now, it's if you don't have that skill set, invest in getting a facilitator or CEO or some nature that has the skill set to facilitate that. And I'm like, that's really not a 30-day goal. That's more of a 90-day goal. So let's shuffle it over here and get really clear. And then you meet with the new employee that you just onboarded and make sure and clarify and verify that they understand what's being asked of them. Clarify and verify with them that they know what the resources are that they're going to need to tap into, either what they come with to the table or making certain that the company offers those resources, and then meet on that every single week. And then at 30 days, do an evaluation where we're at and repeat that over and over again for this first 6 months onboarding. And then for your new employees and your existing employees, make sure that you have quarterly growth plan for all of your employees. I do presentations all the time on why the employee review must die. You know, reviews feel very archaic. They feel like your head's on the chopping block. The employee doesn't like it. The employer doesn't like it. Nobody knows what to do with it. Do you get a raise? Do you not get a raise? Are you keeping your job? Are you not keeping your job? And really transform it and do a 2-millimeter shift of turning it into an employee growth plan, where they're fully, wholly invested in their growth in addition to what they contribute to the company.
So you believe in the employee and the supervisor performing this evaluation, as I recall.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you say that. I think that shift has made the biggest difference with the businesses that I work with. First, the employee does a self-evaluation. Again, if any of your guests want to get my process, I'd be happy to give it to you for free. So if the employee does a self-evaluation, then the supervisor or manager does an evaluation, and then they come together and treat it like a coaching conversation and just really solidify and giving that opportunity for them to walk away with a plan that they're both wholly in agreement with and excited about.
Molly, there's 2 things. One is I love that about the performance review. I mean, I don't know how far you went back into my career, but I started as a dentist. So again, professionals, how they hired people. One of the things I used to do, and I'm going back into the 80s, I'm going back a long time, and is we did an annual review. Now, at that point, it was probably related more to salary increases than anything else. However, that's exactly how we did it. I used to do an evaluation, and I'd have the employee do an evaluation. And I said, this isn't about whether, if you're worried about having a job or keeping your job, then you wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't ask you to fill this out if it was about terminating you. This was about what your goals, what it looks like for the next year. And we'd have a conversation, and I would look at, I gave you a 5, you gave yourself a 3. Why do you think you're not doing as well as you should? Yes. Or vice versa, which is usually, what they looked for. So, I love that as part of that. I want to make sure that we do cover a really important topic, which we talked about in the beginning, which is onboarding. So what does that look like when, the first day? I mean, after that job offer, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share my 90-day onboarding process with anyone as well. It's really, you have the HR stuff that has to happen, but I tell people, listen, whoever that your supervisor is or what department that you're responsible for the first week, this is what I want you to do. I want you to shadow. The employee shadow their supervisor, manager, whatever department head they're working with for 1 week, from everything, sit in every client meeting, every sales meeting, every production meeting, every desk time, when they're sitting there within their desk time. And I want you to, between you shift to every activity, I want the manager, whoever's responsible for training, to say, okay, great. Here's what we're walking into. Here's what we're transitioning or shifting into. Here's what I want you to pay attention and to look for. And then you debrief with the employee after and have them. It makes them be responsible for their own learning. It makes them be fully present and self-governing. And at that time, but then they also reflect back to you where maybe you're not processing, you're not duplicating. You might do 3 different sales meetings and do them completely different, all 3 different ways. And they'll say, well, why'd you do it this way in the first one, this way in the second one? And they will shine the spotlight on where you have lack of process and standards and systems. So they're actually doing many different, they're training, number one, but they're also doing Kaizen improvement, like a quality control analysis of where you might have holes in your systems and process. It is the most transformative way to onboard someone within the first week. And it's fascinating because depending on what role you sit in. So for me, a lot of times they're shadowing the rainmaker, the entrepreneur, the business, or what have you. And they will say after day 1, they're like, how do you do what you do? They're completely exhausted watching their supervisor, their manager, and they have such appreciation for it. And that's where, my second book that I wrote is called Entrepreneurs in Entrepreneurs World, How to Get Your Employees to Step Up and Lead. And it really transforms them to have complete appreciation and respect for what is coming at you. And it really, for me, in that first week is how you have that line of delineation between an employee and an entrepreneur.
And that process of job shadowing does something else that ties back to what Ira talks a lot about, which is that in that job shadowing process, the employee gets to find out just how adaptable he or she will need to be in that position. And that adaptability, we know, is very important.
Indeed.
So showing up on the first day of work and being greeted by, we forgot you were coming. Or, nobody told me that you were coming today. Right? It's not a good thing anymore, right? Molly, again, so many great tips. And I'm listening to you, and there's so many things that just come back to me that I forget, that I think that everybody takes for granted, and obviously they don't. How you mentioned that people can get your tips, your onboarding process. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. You go to my website, hiringandempowering.com, and you can opt in. You can send an email through the contact page, and we will drop you every Tuesday. We have a live podcast, and I'd love to have you on my podcast. And every Thursday, we drop a blog that is just value chock full in regards to tips, tricks, and everything: hiring, firing, onboarding, internal communication, and leadership.
So final question that we start, I used to ask everybody. I started last week, and so I'm going to throw this out to you. 12 months from now, we have you back on. It's May 2022. What are we talking about?
I would love to be talking about entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs world, and really a lot of the work that I do with my Team Empowerment Academy.
Sounds terrific.
Thank
you so much, Molly.
We'll have you back, and we'll be talking about that. Hey, stay safe, Molly. Appreciate it. Great tips. And go to hiringempowering.com and to keep in contact with Molly. So
thank you for having me,
Molly. Bye-bye.
Again, another lightning fast question. One thing after the other. She was talking, there was all these ideas that I used to do going back again 35 years of simple way to have a conversation.
I was recalling when you said the thing about arriving and the computer not being ready and you're here, right? Was that one time I did a training for the employee retention specialist, which is a certification that I created. And somebody from Dell showed me a picture, a mug of candy that they put on people's desks when they arrive, along with a greeting card that's signed by everybody in the department. I love that.
It's a great suggestion. And then you hear the other stories that somebody shows up and there is no desk, there is no computer,
Right.
It's backlog, they didn't get around to it. So again, some things are easy to fix. Some of them just don't cost you much. I mean, what's a cup and a little bit of candy and
right. And a greeting card,
right? Yeah, what's it cost? So again, we're not talking that you need to have a budget or a strategic planning meeting to initiate this. We want to thank everybody for listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We are going to take a short break. We're going to hear from our two sponsors, Ngomu and Success Performance Solutions. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Imagine growing great employees and advancing emerging leaders for less than $1 a day. The Ngomu app will support your employees in a myriad of ways, from career and personal development to health and wellness. No need to schedule and hold trainings. Just have them access over 90 coaches for live virtual group and one-on-one coaching for whatever topic they need or want to work on. Anytime, anywhere. Learn more at ngomu.com today.
For many people, the bridge to the new normal is too far, too difficult, too scary. Waiting to get back to normal becomes a way of life, filled with fear and despair. But wait, why are those people who dare to travel to the new normal celebrating? Opportunity and growth? How can you get a piece of the action? The bridge between the past and the future, the status quo and the new normal is adaptability. You have a choice. Which side of the future do you want to land on? Will it be coping and surviving or growing and thriving? Adaptability quotient is the new competitive edge.
And welcome back, everyone, to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. We have our second segment. Again, we want to thank Ngomu and Success Performance Solutions for sponsoring the show. And we want to thank you, our listeners, for being part of it. We've got another great guest here. Before we get there, I just want to put a reminder up about the webinar that's coming up. We talked about adaptability. You just saw the commercial. 20th, 1 p.m. We've got how to grow and thrive in a FCDD up world, effed up world, which is, by the way, is frustrating, confusing, disappointing, and distracting. And that's sort of the world that we live in.
Today's Herman Trend Alert, which hasn't gone out yet, will be about a new community in Florida that's about 20 miles outside of Fort Myers called Babcock Ranch. And Babcock Ranch is the town of the future. It is 100% solar. The preferred vehicles are bicycle and golf cart. There's a town center. There is an incubator called the Hatchery. It's sort of designed to foster innovation and creativity. Every house that's built in this Babcock Ranch community must be equipped for electric vehicle charging. So it's just, and the homes start at there are 2-bedroom apartments or homes that start at around 200,000 and go up. And you can imagine they go up to beautiful lakeside mansions. Just quite an interesting community. And it's an engineered community so that it's built with people in mind and with the environment in mind. They reclaimed a bunch of swamp to bring back. It had been cleared for pastures, and they wanted to bring back the original landscape. So it's just, I can't wait. And hopefully, Ira, we will be able to have the developer, Sid Kitson, on. Sid is the recipient a Gold Edison Award for Babcock Ranch, and also for his lifetime achievement, I believe.
Well, we're visiting my mother in Sarasota, which is only about an hour and a half from Fort Myers, maybe even less, depending on where in Fort Myers it's located. So hopefully, I know it won't happen this weekend, but in one of the future ones, hopefully we'll be able to take a drive down and visit that. But it's also interesting that you bring that up. Well, since we're going to switch gears here, since it doesn't look, something must have happened with Tova, we'll have to check on that once we get off the air. The other day, and some people might have seen it, and then it made the news on the site. But they talked, I think it was on the Today Show is where I saw it. They talked about 3D printing homes, and it was, for half, and it's advanced so much just in the 2 or 3 years since I first started to talk about that 2 or 3 years ago, they talked about within a 24-hour period, you produce a home about 700 square feet. So it was a room, and they were looking at this
tiny home.
Yeah,
right?
They were solving this for housing, so either instead of trailers after a hurricane, they can come in and you'd bring in these trailers and they would just print these homes to house people. And, again, it's mostly concrete. So, but it was basically 4 concrete walls, and I don't even know, they had an opening for a door and maybe a window or 2.
I was just going to say, no windows.
Well, now, so anyway, I mentioned that I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I spoke at a national meeting, and they were in the construction business. They weren't contractors, but they were in the equipment business. And we were talking about, they said, can you come in and talk to our guys? And most of them were guys. So our guys about what the future is going to be and what type of, they don't get, they're always, and it was from HR, they're always complaining how hard it is to find tradespeople. Can you imagine now? This was 2-3 years ago.
Can you imagine now?
And they said, can you kind of, I guess do the old 2x4, wake them up, get the aha moment. So they go, oh, I didn't realize things are changing so much. I didn't realize that's what the market's like. And I talked about what the future was going to be. And essentially, if you're having trouble now finding, builders and contractor and tradespeople, what's it going to be like in, we were talking 5 to 10 years. And obviously it happened in 2 years. I mentioned 3D printing, and one guy literally, and I say it was a guy, literally got up, said, "This is BS," and walked out. And I looked in the front, and a couple of people were nodding their heads. A couple of people were doing the, nodding in that way. And, few people walked up and they said, "You were so right." But most of the people walked down and go, "He's not from my industry. What's a dentist know about the future of work? What's he know about this? That's never going to happen." Well, here it was. They're now doing mass building, and I don't know if it was down in Houston. It was down in the South somewhere, and especially after hurricanes. And one of the people that they interviewed said, my home in the last 10 years, we've lost it 2 or 3 times. And the fact is that within 48 hours, they were able to build, I think, a 1,400 square foot home. They showed the interior of it.
Love it.
And you talk about not only, not taking 6 months to years to build that home,
right.
Shortages of labor. But there is going to be a shortage of labor, but the shortages of labor, what do we do about the lack of electricians? And I don't know what they're doing with that. So we still may need all the electricians and the plumbers, but instead of hiring people to swing hammers, they may not need as many people. And within 48 hours, at half the cost of building a similar home, and now it opened up a whole new market for people who couldn't afford this $500,000 home in the area. Now it's $250,000, where they couldn't afford a $300,000 home. It's $150,000. And again, approximately 1,500 to 2,000 square foot home, literally ready, not quite ready to move in, but built and ready to get the finishing touches on it within that short period of time. So, the miracles of technology. But for companies, I'm sure there's still companies that would say this will never work here.
Well, 3D printing is amazing in what it can do. Now there are some Navy ships that instead of carrying an inventory, millions of parts, simply have a 3D printer and the materials that they need to feed the 3D printer, and they can make whatever part they need on the spot just in time.
Well, it saved healthcare. I mean, it saved a lot of industries last year because they were 3D when we couldn't get masks.
Right.
We couldn't get shields. They couldn't get parts. There were companies that literally sprung up, and there were people in their basement producing these. I mean,
right. 3D printing masks,
entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. Yeah, there were people that sprung up, and they weren't doing millions of them, but everybody was able to do a little bit. And then even if everybody could 3D print their own, that took the pressure off. I wrote about this in my book about an HVAC tech. And, now we basically need a repair. We need maintenance. They pull up in their truck. They check it out. If they need a part, they may have it in their truck, or they have to go back to the shop, or they have to order it, and then they come back again. And the story that I told was, and I actually handed the book a few weeks ago to our HVAC tech was here about it. And he said, because he had to go back to the shop to get a part.
Right.
And I said, so here, let me share this with you, was that an autonomous vehicle shows up because there was a drone in the air, because there were sensors on our unit, and the sensor set off an alarm that got queued over to the business. Great. The business says, we need to send somebody out. So they send an autonomous vehicle out there. There may be a person in it or a robot, let's say, but there was a person in it. He goes out, he checks it, realizes that a part needs to be replaced, goes back to the van and prints the part. Or calls or triggers the call to the drone, calls the shop, and they send the part over with the drone. Now, and everybody just said, wouldn't that be amazing? Well, in some degrees, in some fashion, it's happening already. I don't know. I don't think we have an autonomous vehicle pulling up, with somebody in there, and I don't think it's carrying a 3D printer, but it doesn't mean they don't go back to the shop and print the part up. It doesn't, and it's so close to coming. But ultimately, we're talking about shortages of labor now. I mean, we're talking some basic skills that we don't have people that are interested in some very, very basic, the trades. Now you have like an HVAC tech is no longer a mechanic. It used to be just a mechanic. If they could fix the part.
He has to be computer literate now.
They're a computer tech. They're a service technician that just happens to know electric or plumbing. It's reversed.
Or HVAC, right?
Yeah, and again, there's people, they make a lot of money. I mean, they're good paying jobs, as you know. We talk about that with Ed all the time. And then just yesterday,
and not necessarily college degree, probably not college.
Probably degree. Not, right? And a lot of them, but they continue their education and get a degree, but they don't need that to get started. And just yesterday, and again, it's this deja vu again. I think it was on Marketplace, PBS.
NPR.
Yeah, they were talking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were talking about manufacturing, that manufacturers can't find enough people, and how it's still considered
big surprise, right?
Yeah, it's still considered a dirty, dark smokestack industry, and parents are to blame. I mean, we talk about this all the time. Is that you need a 4-year degree? You don't want to, you don't want to go into the trades. You don't want to go into manufacturing. And manufacturing today is really a technology industry. Look at the car industry, and look at the car industry. Look at all the shortage. We talked a couple of weeks ago about car rentals. Why they couldn't get car rentals? Well, they couldn't get. They sold off their fleets because of the pandemic.
Right.
Now
the demand is coming back, and they don't have the cars.
And the car manufacturers can't build the cars because they don't have the semiconductors. They can't. Right. So they can't produce the cars. So now they're eating up the small business market, and a lot of the used cars aren't serviceable because the chips have gone bad, and they can't get the replacements because there's a semiconductor shortage. So it's interesting. Everything's all tied in, and when anybody thinks that, that's not my industry, that's not related to me, you don't understand my business. It's time to wake up and smell, and literally smell the coffee.
And the truth is, we really need to encourage young people to go into the trades, to to take those high paying jobs and to learn those computer systems. Because if we don't, it's going to be weeks before you can get a tradesman to your house sometimes.
And for every parent and every employer says that they're just naturals at it. Now they know how to use most everybody knows how to use the technology. They can pick up the phone and they can download an app. But it's the repair. Who's going to service it? Who's going to improve it? Who's going to connect all these, literally this year, 41 billion connected devices. Who's going to help connect those and keep that network up as we get more connected. Again, we apologize. I was really looking forward to Tova. She had some great suggestions. We're going to check.
And her TED Talk was excellent.
Yeah, it was outstanding. So I suggest just to get a preview. Hopefully we can get her back on the air in the future.
Hopefully.
Check out Tova Sherman. Her new book is Win, Win, Win. Thank you, Molly McGrath from Hiring and Empowering Solutions, for being here. We had a great conversation about hiring tips and especially the importance of onboarding and so forth. Don't forget, in May 20th, we got our webinar coming up.
Right?
Yeah, how to grow and thrive in a effed up world. And I also, for those that might be interested, just reach out to me. I'll send you the link. It is up on the website as well. But I have a webinar for your candidate experiences all effed up. And that's mostly on recruitment marketing. We recorded the keynote that I've been giving at many conferences. And so it's up there 24/7 on demand. So you don't have to travel, get in the plane. There is a small fee for it, but you'll also included that you'll get my book as well. Any closing thoughts, Joyce, for the week?
Take care of your employees and they will take care of you. If you don't take care of your employees, no problem. Just like your teeth, they'll leave.
And next week, we've got two great guests. Good friend of the show. She's been on a couple times. I've interviewed her, Solange Shira, Dr. Solange Shira. She'll be joining us. We're going to be talking about the new regulation from the SEC. For so many years, people are talking about people are our most important asset. Now they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is because it's going to be a requirement. They're going to have to stop looking at it as an expense and put them on the balance sheet. And then Debbie Levitt, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be on, and she has a new course out, a good course, primarily based on UX and CX of how to treat your candidates better.
So is Solange the first guest and Debbie the second?
And the second, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. Got it.
So Solange's company is also HC Moneyball. So she's actually from HR, but her passion is data analytics.
Human Capital Moneyball. I think I know her. I think I know her. Yeah.
So excellent. We appreciate everybody being here. Thanks again. Thank you, Ngomo. Thank you, Success Performance Solution. Thank you, all our listeners. Thank you, Googlization Nation. Please stay safe and don't let the shift hit your plans.